All right, guys, you're here with Josh Thomson, Punk's Opinion. Here with, obviously, producer Dave. It's the two of us right now. Sammy's MIA, man. Hey, what can we say? He's probably still stuck in Vegas. But we decided, we've had a lot of good responses from the last two shows. We chained together since pre-UFC 235. And we are now here post-UFC 235. And we did another show yesterday. We're going to do this one now. This one is basically like all fan questions. So we decided to hit you guys up, and you guys hit us up and busted off a bunch of fan questions. So some questions are repeats, but we're gonna rattle through these and answer some questions, and we'll go from there. Producer Dave, what do we got for us, big dog?
Okay, James Garrett has two questions in one. I don't know why he didn't make it two, but we'll get them both.
Okay.
What do you want to see next for Conor McGregor? And what do you think about Chandler v. Pitbull?
What do I want to see next for Conor McGregor? You know what? I was really intrigued with the Donald Cerrone fight. I think Donald has a good chance of beating him, but I also think that Donald's very susceptible to getting hit and punched. We saw that with the Nate Diaz fight. I know the Nate Diaz fight was a long time ago, but that being said, guys with good boxing, good combinations, and with the good reach, have a tendency to land big punches on him. So I think that made it for a very interesting fight. Also, too, the southpaw stance, along with the kicking of Donald Cerrone, definitely makes it for a good stand-up fight. Now, will Donald Cerrone fight a smart fight against Conor McGregor? That would be the thing that I would ask myself, because hands down, he's a better wrestler. Hands down, he's better on the ground than Conor McGregor. Also, is it at 155 or is it at 170? That's the other question. Those were the things. I was really excited for that fight. I understood that, from what I understand, the reason why they didn't make that fight was because there was talk of them being the co-main event, and that fucking baffles me. It just completely baffles me. Like, let's not just forget that even though Conor McGregor is coming off of a loss to Khabib, and he's not a champion, who gives a fuck? No one gives a shit. They want to just see him fight. They like to watch the pre-stuff that comes up to it, all the PR and the media and everything that leads up to these fights. I think a little bit of the problem would be is that I think the UFC knows that Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone have a mutual respect for each other, and they've been overly nice to each other, even in just talks of possibly having this fight. And the UFC wants something that's maybe a little bit more dramatic. I guess apparently they're trying to stay with the threshold or stay with the theme of, if you're the main event, it has to be for a title, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sorry, but when your main event guy is not a champion, but still draws 1 million more pay-per-views than everybody else, you might want to just shake that whole theme that you're going with just for this guy. I mean, Conor McGregor is cut from a different cloth, man. He was able to do things that a lot of guys have tried to do in the past, and no one was able to be successful doing, and he's done it, man. He's got the fuck you money. He's bucked the system. He did a great job, man. Like, he knows what he wants, and if you're not going to put him as the main event, you're going to have a hard time. I think this is another reason, honestly, to have the 165-pound title. You have a chance for Khabib and Conor to fight again, maybe for the 165-pound title. You have Ben Askren that's available probably to make 165, is from what I understand. He can make the weight pretty easily. T Wood, I don't know if T Wood would cut down to 65. I think it'd be wise for him to do that, because going up to 85, I don't think is a good deal for him. He's not a big guy, so he's shorter, thicker, but physically not a big guy. As far as what else, the only other fight I could really potentially see for Conor McGregor, and you need to get him somebody that makes for an interesting fight, that would be exciting to watch and people would love to see it, would be Nate Diaz again. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I would love to see the Nate Diaz fight all over again. Both of them need to get a win. Both of them need to get back in the cage. Both of them need to stay as busy as they can. UFC right now, honestly, UFC needs them. They're not. they don't have really anybody else. His last fight is coming up. Jon Jones has the potential of staying pretty damn busy because all the guys he's fighting really aren't as good, as him. And I don't know a lot of guys that are as good as him either. So the Santos fight, though, is from what I understand is going to be next. That makes for a very interesting fight. I also am very excited about Johnny Walker saying there's a good chance that he's going to fight Gustafsson in Stockholm, in Sweden. That, to me, is pretty cool because Gus is like what? How tall is Gus? I want to say he's 6'6" or 6'7", and Johnny Walker is 6'6". Did we say that yesterday? 6'6"?
I think he's only 6'1". Oh wait,
no, he's
Johnny
not
Walker?
6. No, Johnny Walker is 6'6".
6'4".
Oh, so Gus is only 6'4".
Yeah.
Johnny Walker, I thought he said he was 6'6".
Right here. Here it is. 6'6", yeah.
Oh wow, 6'6". So I mean, to me, that makes for an interesting fight. He's also got a little bit of an injury to come off of because he hurt his shoulder. So apparently from that stupid forward fall roll / trying to do the watermelon crawl, whatever you want to call it, the centipede, millipede, whatever. He kind of jacked his shoulder up a little bit. They said he shouldn't need surgery, but he'll be out for, a good 4 weeks suspension or something like that because of his shoulder. But I think that makes for a very interesting fight. I mean, it sucks for Gus because you're fighting a guy who's relatively unknown, has good fights, good wins as of recently, but it sucks to always fight someone who's not ranked like higher up. But I think he's going to jump in the rankings after his 2 big wins. Anyways, as far as those fights, McGregor and Nate Diaz are this fight I want to see, or the McGregor and Donald Cerrone fight. Those are really realistically like the only 2 fights I'd really like to see. I mean, I honestly would, and the only reason why I'm leaning towards Cowboy Cerrone is, man, Cowboy's put in his work, dude. That guy, he fights his ass off. He fights all the time. He obviously lives a lifestyle that he tries to keep up with, but I would like to see him get a big payday, like a huge payday. He's been around for a long time. Nothing but the most respect for him. I think he's one of the guys that definitely has deserved it, and I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him get a big payday. If not him, I honestly wouldn't mind seeing Anthony Pettis and Conor McGregor. That would make for an interesting fight as well. I think that'd be kind of flashy and fun, fight there. So, yeah, that makes for fun. I think that'd be good. So those 3 guys, huh?
Today's the 3-year anniversary of
Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. 1.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely makes for a good fight. Look at Conor McGregor pre-tattoos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. As far as the second question was, what do you think about Chandler versus Pitbull? I mean, you want my honest opinion? They're mirror images of each other. Just Chandler's going to come in a lot heavier and bigger by the time when it comes down to fight time. Like they're going to both weigh in at they're going to both weigh in at the same. But when it comes fight time, Chandler's going to be about 180, and Pitbull's going to be probably 10 pounds or 8 pounds over what he weighed in at, which is going to make a big difference. But Patricio has the power in his hands. He's got very similar in the submissions, good guillotine, good he's got good guillotines, good kimuras. He's got some good stuff, good arming guillotines. I mean, they're very similar in fighting styles. I would say the speed would probably go a little bit to Patricio, but Patricio does tend to slow down as the fight goes on. But then again, so does Chandler. We saw Chandler versus Primus in Hawaii, and I think Primus opened up the gateway on how to kind of beat Michael Chandler. That low-level calf kick. Patricio's got some good kicks. We saw that with Benson Henderson. He's got the speed with the hands. He had Benson guessing, couldn't figure him out. I mean, realistically, it was a fluke thing. I mean, I had Patricio beating Benson up until he broke his leg on one of the leg kicks. Chandler doesn't check kicks. So that being said, I think Patricio has a good chance of beating him. It's going to be a hard fight for him, though, a very hard fight. I think the size is going to play a factor as the fight goes on. Patricio does not want to be underneath Michael Chandler, and if he can't stop the wrestling, it's gonna be a hard fight for him. I've had an opportunity to train and grapple with Patricio, and he is physically very strong, though. We only rolled for about 12, 15 minutes, something like that. But I mean, he's physically a very strong guy. It's very hard to move because he's so short and compact. But obviously very talented, very strong, very good arm and guillotine, very good guillotine. Likes to attack the Kimura, and he's good all the way around. And he'll push the pace on Chandler. Chandler tends to slow down as well as Patricio. The both of them kind of slow down in the 3rd and 4th and 5th rounds. And we saw Chandler do that with Primus. We saw him do that as well with Benson Henderson. And he has a tendency sometimes to do that as the fight goes on. Don't get me wrong. He's still nasty as fuck in the fight. He still has big power. He's still fast and explosive. But as the fight goes on, he tends to slow down. He hasn't figured out that remedy yet. Like he has a tendency, and I think you'll always see that kind of with guys that are super explosive, super fast, and that fast twitch muscle, and some wrestlers that come from that wrestling background of I just got to go hard for 6 minutes. Well, this fight is 25 minutes, my man, and you got to go hard for 25 minutes. So you got to find a pace, and he hasn't learned quite how to, I think, pace himself as the fight goes on. He just fights with these emotions and balls to the wall, and I think it's cost him in some of his losses from before when he lost to Will Brooks, a couple times, and he lost to Eddie Alvarez. In those exchanges, he kind of pushed so hard that it ended up costing him as the fight went on. And the same thing, it almost cost him with Benson Henderson. Had Ben had a little bit more of a push and drive into with like a little bit of where he just with sense of urgency. Had he had a little bit more sense of urgency, I think there was a good chance that he would have won that fight. That Ben would have beat Chandler. So Patricio's got a good chance, but as the fight goes on, it's gonna be a little bit harder for him. Because he tends to slow down as well as Chandler does, and I think the size will play a factor. You can get into the 3rd and the 4th, 5th round, especially if Chandler's able to get on top of him. It's going to wear on Patricio as the fight goes on. But all in all, I mean, I'm really fucking amped for this fight. This is going to make for a great fight. What was the next question?
From Dominick Martinez, do you see anyone at 170 beating Kamaru Usman after that great performance against Tyron? Also, what styles could give him problems?
The style that's going to give him a problem is Ben Askren. That's the style that's going to give him a problem. And I could also see Robbie Lawler giving him some problems. Look, Usman's got great wrestling. He closed the distance really well. He's pretty fast and explosive. But we saw a little bit with Woodley. He didn't have the stand-up or the striking. Like, it's not quite to the level, and the explosiveness is not quite to the level of Woodley. But Woodley was so gun-shy because he didn't want to get taken down. Robbie showed against Ben Askren that he's able to stop somebody like Ben Askren's takedowns with those first couple stoppages of the takedown. I mean, I thought Robbie did a great job. Now, as the fight goes on, Usman's shown that he's got the ability to keep wrestling like that for 5 hard rounds. Robbie has shown that he doesn't have that. So if Robbie can touch Usman's chin early in the fight and make him hesitant to shoot, I think there's a great chance he can beat Usman as the fight goes, in the earlier rounds, like I'd say rounds 1 through 3. I think the only other guy that I could see that beats Usman would be Ben Askren. That's stylistically though. Like stylistically, it makes for that kind of fight. But I think they're gonna run it back, man. They're gonna run Woodley back. They're gonna have Woodley fight Usman. I think that's the fight they're gonna make again. I think they want to get Woodley out of the picture completely and push him maybe to 185 or just not have him fight for the title for the longest time. Dana White can say whatever he wants on camera, but behind the scenes, that fool's like, man, I don't want any more Woodley on my table, man. Like, you get to the undercard, stop paying you so much money, and and just keep you on the burner. That's kind of what I think that Dana wants to do with Tyron Woodley. Those are the only 2 fights that I think that would be feasible guys that could potentially beat Usman. I mean, Colby Covington, my honest opinion, I think Usman does everything a little bit better. And I think as the fight goes on, Usman has shown, he showed up with Woodley, that he can do that for 5 hard rounds. He can push the pace. He can keep wrestling. He can get the takedowns, and he can touch you left and right. Now, there is an underdog in all of this, and somebody said something to me about this, asking me about this. Why are people sleeping on Masvidal? I have no idea, man. I have no idea. If he gets past Darren Till, I'm telling you right now, Masvidal is someone to be reckoned with, someone to be fucking to not fuck around with. He is someone that his wrestling is drastically underrated. He's extremely good. His losses to Damian Maia, he just basically got wrestle fucked to death, but was able to stop a lot of Damian Maia's takedowns. And as the fight went on, he eventually ended up losing a takedown, and that cost him. Now, Stephen Thomson, I mean, it was an ugly fight. It was just, it was what it was. It was just one of those fights. And Masvidal likes to fight. I think with Usman, and I think Masvidal has, if he fights a smart fight, he has a chance of beating Usman, but it would be a tough fight. He's got to stop that takedown and that wrestling. He's got to be able to do it for 5 hard rounds if he ever gets to that title shot position. But I don't think he's that far away, just my honest opinion. The 2 losses he had, Damian Maia and Stephen Thomson. The other thing, you can't sleep on him. So Darren Till and him is going to make for a great fight. I think that's a great matchup. UFC did a good job on getting that fight together. The winner of that will probably fight the winner of Robbie Lawler and Ben Askren when they run it back. And that makes for a good, that gives Tyron Woodley enough time to get a rematch against Usman and see what happens in that second fight with there. I think that's what's going to happen, man. I think Colby Covington's out, and they're not going to have him fight Usman. They should have him fight Usman because there's all the drama with the manager, with Ali, and with Usman and Covington, and just the drama leading up to the fight, as well as while they were there this last week at the fights. And I don't know why they wouldn't have that fight happen, but I think they're going to give Woodley an automatic rematch so they can, if Usman can beat him again, they can push Woodley completely out of the title picture for a little bit, at least 2 years. Next question.
Paul Mayer asked a very similar question, so we'll go on to the next one.
What's the question?
What's your take on Usman and Askren? Personally, I think Askren needs a few good wins. The last one was a stinker.
Well, Askren also came out today and said he's going to talk with Woodley about it and see exactly what he would like to do. He's willing to go ahead and step aside and let Woodley get the automatic rematch and go from there, and he'll fight somebody else in the meantime. He'll fight Darren Till, or he'll fight, the winner of Darren Till and Masvidal, or he'll fight, somebody else. Maybe he'll fight Colby Covington. I don't think they're going to waste Colby Covington on that fight. I think they want to potentially get him in that title mix, or they want to push him to the back burner and not have him fight at all. That's kind of my take on that whole ordeal.
Travis DeCurtis asks, who or what style is best suited to defeat Khabib in a 5-round contest?
At what weight class?
I mean, I assume.
I mean, the best style, I would say, would be someone like Usman. That would probably be the best style. Somebody like a Tyron Woodley, Usman. I mean, but we're talking a whole weight class above. I mean, nobody in 155 is going to touch him. I mean, I'm extremely interested to see the Tony Ferguson fight. I really am. The only reason why I'm interested to see that fight is because Tony does a really good job at cutting people. And I know firsthand because I've got 2 Mercedes-Benz signals on my fucking forehead, from him. And I've got a big gash from here on there. I mean, this one here was I want to say they said it was 22 or 24 stitches. I mean, just nasty, man. That makes for an interesting fight. I'm not a fan of elbows on the ground, but when I fought Tony, he cut me up on the feet. So that makes for an interesting fight. If he fights somebody like Khabib, there's a good chance that he can cut up Khabib with his elbows. I mean, that can happen. Khabib doesn't have long hair. Yeah, that one right there, 22 or 24.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, it looks like a vagina on my fucking forehead. Yeah, it's right there on the side. I got one stitch in my nose, and then right above where my bangs is, there's 2 Mercedes-Benz. So it looks like a Mercedes-Benz sign. I have 2 of them on my head. Just nasty, man. I mean, it's the fight game, but and he landed those, and I was always against elbows on the ground, even from Strikeforce days. But those elbows are not from the ground, dude. I mean, those elbows are from the feet. I think one of the Mercedes ones was when I think he was trying to attack Kimura on me, or I was in his guard or something like that, and he hit his he was landing those kind of spear elbows to the forehead, but he was on his back, so they all counted. All legit strikes, man. He did a great job. I think that makes for an interesting fight against somebody like Khabib, because Khabib has short hair, he shaves his head. And we saw when you go back and you watch the Yves Edwards fights with Joe Daddy Stevenson. I know it's back in the day. Some of you guys probably weren't even born yet. But when you go back and watch those fights, dude, Yves had, obviously had really, really short hair. And that shit was just, his blood was just spewing out. There's nothing there to like kind of stop the bleeding or make it slow down if you have a shaved head. And Khabib shaves his head. It just makes it very interesting. Khabib's gonna have a hard time, I think, stopping Tony because Tony's so tough. But I think it does make for an interesting fight, man. And Khabib, I've talked to Khabib, and he thinks that Tony should be next. He's not really willing to give Conor McGregor a fight because the money really isn't an issue. He's just like, what, I'm ready to move on. And he's like, I beat him easily. It wasn't even a close fight. Even though Conor's the only one to ever win a round against him, in the UFC. But I think Tony and him make for a very exciting fight, and I'm definitely not somebody that is going to say that I wouldn't want to see that fight. That, to me, makes for a great fight. I'd love to see that fight. Just my personal opinion. But stylistically, I think Tony in that weight class, in that 155-pound weight class, I think he's the only one that I could see giving Khabib a tough go, and only because he's so funky and so different, and and he definitely has very sharp elbows. I mean, that fight, and then other than that, you got to go up to, I think, 170. I think then at 170, there's a lot of fights there that make that strike my interest and make it different, make it a different type of fight that really will push Khabib to the limit. I mean, Tony, I think that will do that as well, but I'd have to see the fight. I mean, it's one of those unknown fights. Like you just don't know what you're gonna get with Tony Ferguson. I mean, I shot a double leg on him. He did a fucking forward roll and wiggled right out of it. I was like, what the fuck? I'd never had anyone do that to me, and I'd never trained with anyone that had ever done that or seen that done, in an actual real fight. So it just was one of those things. I think he definitely makes for some interesting stuff. Anyways, next question.
Blake Oakton asks, what are the main differences you notice between your prime and now, positive or negative?
Let's see. What are the main differences that I've noticed between my prime and how when I was older?
Yep, your prime and now.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you're going back like 20 years. But
yeah. I mean, 10 years, 12 years, something like that. It's pretty much 12 years. It's pretty close, man. Look, I always feel that the fighters, they're pretty much in their prime from like 26 to 27. Probably, I didn't get my prime, I felt like, until I was 28. So 28 to 32, I felt like I was unstoppable. I felt like no one could beat me. I felt great. I felt great in the gym. I wanted to train all the time. My focus was there. I felt amazing. Like I was training with, Swick, Fitch, Koscheck, good guy. I mean, really good guys. And then Gray Maynard and those guys came over like when I started to hit like 31, 32, Gray Maynard and Tyson Griffin. And they just helped me elevate to another level of guys my size. My whole career, I spent time training with guys like Fitch, Koss, Swick, Bobby Southworth, Trevor Prangley, Phil Baroni. I mean, those are guys I was training with all the time. I mean, if you guys go back and listen to my podcast with Javier Mendez, I mean, he'll tell stories about how I was sparring with Paul Bonatello, Mike Kyle. I was in there doing like, 2-3 rounds at a time with those guys, just standing toe-to-toe and banging with them. What I did notice is that as I got older, I was a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger. I was a little bit more hesitant. I felt like my punches wouldn't get there fast enough in the amount of time that the younger guys could counter me or throw 2 or 3 punches. And even though I still considered myself to be one of the faster guys, even all the way up until I fought Tony Ferguson and Pitbull and all these other guys, I still felt like, sure, I had the speed to get in and out, but it was like a little bit slower, a little bit. I was getting hit when I wouldn't normally get hit. And for me, I prided myself on not really taking a lot of damage throughout my career. And I think that's why I had such a long career. I focused a lot on head movement. I focused a lot on, making sure my defense was good when I was covering. I think that's why there was such a long gap between the mistake I made against Yves Edwards, trying to show off and be a showman, and it cost me a fight with a highlight reel knockout, being knocked out. And then also too, like later on, just slowing down and taking shots in the Tony Ferguson fight, the the Pitbull fight. I mean, even in the third Gilbert fight, I kind of took some shots that I felt like I shouldn't have taken, and I went back and watched the fight. But to me, it was a good fight. I just feel like, there was a lot of things in those later fights that I was taking more damage than I had taken pretty much my whole career that I shouldn't have done. You know what I mean? So these are all, I mean, those are things that changed as time went on and the fight went on as I was fighting longer, and it happens. And I think for some guys, they hang on to it too long, and they think, look, I'm not gonna. I don't want to sound like I'm knocking Diego Sanchez, but he's been fighting a long time. He got a great win this last weekend, destroyed Mickey Gall. He just basically overwhelmed him. Technique and the maturity of him and understanding like what it takes to get that win, you cannot knock that. But for me, I'm not saying that I'm retired, but the chances of me fighting again are pretty slim. I feel very comfortable where I'm at, but I also am not the person like he fought on the undercard. He was main eventing cards. He was, he won the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, he's been with them forever. I guess for me, like once I realized there was no chance for me to fight for the title, or maybe there is, all I had to do, I mean, I was always one fight away in Bellator, or I was like a fight or two away from fighting for the UFC title. Also, even in the second stint when I was there, it's just not, I just realized like, okay, look, I'm going to fight 2 or 3 tough guys. You got to get these wins and they've got to be impressive. Otherwise, Dana's not going to give you a title shot. The Benson fight, I wasn't distracted or deterred, but when I fought Bobby Green, it was like a last minute replacement. He took the fight on, 2 weeks notice. I was supposed to fight Michael Johnson. We got hit with drug tests. He pulled out of the fight. It was like I was already kind of rubbed the wrong way with the whole ordeal. I had some behind the scenes stuff going on with the UFC that was bugging me as well. It just was a lot, dude. Like I just knew I didn't want to fight for the UFC anymore. After my fight or pretty much right before my fight with Ben, I knew it. Just all the issues that I had with being able to get the fight with Benson, it just really made me feel like I don't want to be here. And I knew I was locked into a contract with him, so I was like, fuck, you just fight your fights. And I think a little bit of that showed when I fought Bobby Green. I was like, whatever, man. I was like, I don't know. I wasn't into the fight. I wasn't like I should have been into the fight, because with a win over him, that would have put me right. I wouldn't have fought probably Tony the next fight. I would have probably fought somebody else. There was also a ton of stuff. I always had been fans that always hit me up telling me like, hey, I want to see you fight Pettis. Hey, I want to see you fight Donald Cerrone. They wanted to see me fight stand-up guys, and those fights were never offered to me. So there was another frustration that I was asking for, and I was like, hey, let me get these fights. These make for good fights. Let's get this fight, and they were like, nah, it's not really, that's not on the table, this and that. And I was like, all right. So once I realized that they really weren't interested in having me fight, the guys that I thought would help bring the best out of me, it was hard to get up for these fights, and it wasn't for me. I think it wasn't for me. I went to fight, and when I went to go to Bellator, I felt like some time had changed and passed, and I wasn't at my best, and I had 2 good performances. When I first got there, which was good for me. I felt good about it. But, and then I just didn't have a great performance against Pitbull. And, and I just, like I said, the whole reaction of the timing, what I noticed from when I was younger to when I got older was just I couldn't get out of the range of the punch. I couldn't get in and get out before getting hit, and that bugged me. And I knew I didn't want to be... I didn't want to start fighting, like being the opening fight on the main card, or being the main event on the prelims, or even maybe being further down on the prelims. I just never wanted to be that person. And if you can't be the best, I mean, like, if you don't have an opportunity to be the best, I just didn't want to do it. And so I think that was the best thing for me at the time. I'm not saying I'm retired, but I'm just simply saying that, when you realize that and you understand that, or you're just doing it for the money. And later on in life, that money's not going to mean shit when you have your family and your friends and you want to spend time with them, and maybe you've got, whatever, whether it's brain damage or you just can't put a sentence together, or you got a stutter, or, if you decide to have kids and, and you got dementia when you're fucking 50 years old when you shouldn't have it. Like little things like that, being able to play basketball with your kids, whatever it is, football, play catch. those are all the things that to me later on in life are more important. I think that's why I've focused on, like, I've put a lot of energy and focus on doing this, on being an analyst now for Bellator and making sure that I'm helping promote an organization that I feel comfortable with and I feel confident in, and that I feel like they're doing the right thing for the athletes themselves. And that's why I feel good about what I'm doing right now. So to answer, I know that was kind of long-winded. That was a pretty long-winded answer to that question, but there's so many different parts and things that go through my mind when people ask me about my prime and my, and towards the end of my career, and in the UFC and Bellator and Pride, Dream, and all the other things that go along with it, and Strikeforce. And there's so much to be said. I've got so much history in the organizations and in all the organizations. And, I'm thankful for it all. But it's, I think sometimes you just have to understand that it may be time, and some fighters have a hard time doing that. Next question.
All right, this one's from Austin. Kind of touched on it already, but how do you think Khabib does against Kamaru Usman at 170?
It's a tough fight for him. It's a tough fight for him. The one thing that I can say is that even though we understand that Khabib's wrestling is really good, this is not this is U.S. wrestling versus Russian wrestling. It's a different style of wrestling. You should expect more of the Sambo defensive style of wrestling from Khabib, which Usman, I'm not sure, would be prepared for or know how to handle, or he would train it, but not sure he'd be able to handle it for 5 rounds. Khabib also, I don't think, maybe is not as tall as Usman, which I know that for a fact because I've stood next to both of them. And Usman, I think, has the longer reach, but I think Khabib, if he's able to put Usman on his back, can Usman get up? That's the other thing. Who can take who down and who can hold who down? And look, I don't think that that's a fight that interests Khabib at all, given the fact that they both have the same manager. So I don't think that fight would happen at all. If Usman loses to someone like Colby Covington, that would suit more of what Khabib would look to fight. He looks, I think, at Colby Covington how he looked at Conor McGregor. The guys with the big mouths, the guys that talk all the trash, the guys that, want all the attention. He looks at Colby Covington as if that is the fight. So if Colby Covington was to beat Usman and then maybe beat one more person, I could see Khabib going up and be like, dude, I could beat this guy. Not only could I beat him, but then I'll be the 2-division champion and, make history. I know that Khabib was looking for the GSP fight. He actually is still, just as of recently, I know that he still has mentioned that he'd still like that fight. And maybe GSP would come back if they were able to try and put that together. But I don't think the UFC is going to do that. I don't think they want to take a chance. I don't know why. I don't understand why. I think it would gross more than what Khabib and Conor did. I think GSP and Khabib would do the same, if not more, than Conor McGregor and Khabib did. What's next?
From Bob Ayega.
Boba Yaga?
Bob Ayega.
Oh, I thought you were saying Boba Yaga. I think that means boogeyman in Russian.
He might be a Russian boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, you got to tell some behind-the-scenes action at all GSCs. Post-fight parties. Stop short of getting some poor retired fighter's wife to divorce them, though. Love you guys. You're the best.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to break up happy homes. I mean, they all seem happy. But, look. Dude, the old times and the new times are completely different. So, like, the old UFC parties and events were fucking so much fun, man. You had all the guys that all fought each other that night, all hanging out. Sure, sometimes something else broke out, but it was very rare. Now these guys all have their own parties. They actually truly don't like each other. Colby Covington doesn't really like Usman. Usman doesn't like him. I mean, these guys are trying to fight afterwards. I mean, these are all things that back in the day, it was very rare that it happened. I mean, the Lee Murray thing with Tito Ortiz and all that shit that happened. Those are all things that we all kind of stick to. That was a rare thing to happen. We also used to stick together. I remember I got into a fight in Miami out on the streets with some guys that were just walking by being extremely disrespectful to like some of the girls that all of us were hanging out with. And we had it was like a fucking straight up brawl in the streets, chasing them into the restaurants, like guys were they were like trying to hold the restaurant door open. People were there having dinner, and we're like shoving the door open, trying to stomp these guys, heads and bodies and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of history and stories of things. This was at UFC 142, or no, sorry, not 142, 42, I should say. Sorry, that's how old this motherfucker is. You know what I mean? So that like those fights, I mean, like those are the things that we all stuck and band together. I mean, there was guys that were involved in that altercation way back then that work for the UFC now, and the media that was involved in that whole altercation, they still have like prominent websites. Like these guys that own and run these, they were all with us like those nights when we were having brawls out on the streets, but we're all still friends, man. And it was like a brotherhood back then. Now it's gotten away from that. The sport's not the same. The sport itself has grown. It's grown to be great. I think guys are obviously making a lot more money, but we lost something along the way, and we lost the brotherhood of fighters being fighters and understanding like, hey, this is one of those respectful sports, and we really enjoyed fighting each other, but we also enjoyed winning. But even afterwards, it was like, hey, cheers, and like let's buy each other beers and let's hang out, or let's all head over to the UFC after party and and just get shit faced and have a great time. Everyone had a blast, man. Traveling around, I remember the old days in Mohegan Sun, the old days at Atlantic City, just the old days, and we had a great time. Fights down in Miami. Man, we had some fun times, some really, really good times. But everything's changed. I can't say it's changed for the better, but everything has changed, and it's been good, man. It's been one of those things. So as far as things with like girls and relationships and fighters and I'm not gonna be that person, but I'm just telling you the one altercation and things that I've had experienced. The Miami one was definitely one of the most memorable moments that I had, because I just know the people that were involved. They're still pretty prominent in the sport. Some of them work for the UFC, and some of them still have very prominent websites. And they were all with us, all going to bat for me and for everybody else that was involved in this action. So great stuff, man. I mean, those are friends that you, or people that that you'll always remember because of situations like that. I mean, young, dumb, and I think full of cum is what they said, right? Just stupid stuff we did back then, but it was we all had each other's back. It was pretty cool. We had a great time. Next question.
From Gucci Lame. Does the UFC need a non-biased promoter to get to the next level of the sport, like NBA and NFL? Love the podcast.
What do you mean? Like, I'm trying to figure out what he means.
Do they need a non-biased promoter to go to the next level of the sport, like NBA and NFL?
I don't think so, man. The reason why I don't think so is because, like, Dana does a really good job when there's nothing going on in the organization, is that he makes it about him. And when there is something going on in the organization that's good, like the Conor McGregor and Khabib fight, he makes it all about them. And then when there's nothing going on, he makes it all about him again. Like he is that guy that he's made himself such a star. He can suck up all the attention when there's fucking nothing to talk about in their organization. And I think he's done a great job of that. I criticize him sometimes, like, hey, it's not about you, it's about the fighters. But I understand why he does it. I understand that he makes it about him because the organization doesn't always put on the best fights. It also doesn't always have the best fighters fighting each other. So when that happens, he makes it about him. They had a little lag time and downtime when the Jon Jones wasn't fighting. Khabib and Conor hadn't really got their shit together, for that fight to happen. I mean, there was a lot of little lags in this thing. Max Holloway he's sure he was a star, but until he fought Brian Ortega, that fight really catapulted him to like, okay, there's no one else left in this division. Give me Conor McGregor again, or let me go up to 155. And this is now making some changes. TJ Dillashaw going down. It was historical talk of him going down because he was able to make the weight, but then he had a shitty performance and it kind of was like fizzled out. Had he had a great performance and it was a close fight and won or lost, we'd be talking about it, but we're more talking about the fact that it was a shit show, that he should have never done it, and it was a bad idea for him to do, and that kind of made the whole thing fizzle down to like it was nothing, no big deal, and But as far as all the other fights, I mean, they're going to have to start producing some stars. And you can tell that they're trying to do that right now. They're trying to do it with, Johnny Walker, great performance. Santos, great performances as of lately. He's next for Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones is going to have a quick turnaround because he has such an easy performance or such an easy fight against Anthony Smith. I could see them turning him around as fast as possible. I think also the time off with Jon Jones, I think he's hurting for a little bit of money. That's why we had such a quick turnaround with Gus and with Anthony Smith. I could see him turning around again right away for Santos. I think he's going to need a little bit more time in preparation for someone like Blachowicz or maybe only Blachowicz. That would be the only two guys. The rest of the guys, I think, Santos is going to be the one that's going to be the hardest one. Maybe he'll take a little bit more time off, but he had a quick turnaround. I think it was like 9 weeks before he fought Anthony Smith. We're going to see. That to me, I would expect them to turn that fight around as fast as they can because they're trying to build stars. They're trying to keep their stars that they already have in the limelight to help generate more pay-per-views and more business and more money. Go ahead. What's next?
Jake Matheson asks, if you had to fight one guy for $1 million and the fight is not over until someone is unconscious, who would you rather fight, Jon Jones or Thiago Santos?
Oh, Jon Jones. Jon Jones. Yeah, I think I've always had a harder time with guys that look. Either one of these guys would fucking kill me. So let's just go there. It's. Either one of these guys would fucking murder me. Santos is fucking scary, though, with his power and his willingness to just do whatever it takes. He's spinning back kicks and cartwheel kicks. And, for a big guy, he moves pretty fucking well. Not to mention he's got huge power in both his hands. His fight with Manuel was fucking amazing. One of the best fights I've ever seen. Jon Jones... I think either way, it's a murder fight. You get murdered both ways. But, I would rather fight Jon Jones because if, let's just say, out of miraculously he makes a mistake and you catch him in a bulldog choke or some weird fucked up thing, right? You could say you beat Jon Jones. If you say you beat Santos, everyone would be like, all right, whatever. They're like, hey, you beat Santos. He's like the number 5 guy. No one gives a shit. You beat Jon Jones. Like, dude, you beat the fucking greatest of all time. You know what I mean? That kind of... You might as well take your chance with the greatest and, who people think are the greatest. I don't think he's the greatest, but I'm simply saying only because I'm not saying that he's not a great talent. I'm just simply saying I don't think he's the greatest because he's a known cheater. That's it. Other talent-wise, you can't knock him. Can't knock him, dude. Probably the greatest that ever stepped foot in the cage as far as talent-wise. But he's also a known cheater. So how much does that help to him, his performances and things like that? Anyways, but I might as well take a shot at the champ. And, and who people think is someone who is unbeatable. Might as well fight him.
Next.
Yep.
Jacob Flores, what's the most adversity you've experienced during a camp and how did you overcome it and who is it against?
It was Gilbert Melendez, the first fight. It was the first fight. I was sick. I got a staph infection 2 weeks before the fight. Yeah, it was that. There was some stuff that happened between the first fight and the second fight. I broke my ankle and I broke it 3 times, in an 18-month or 16-month period. And every time I was getting ready to fight him again, I ended up having to go back to the doctor and basically recast it or go back into a walking boot and crutches. And so that happened, and I was able to get through it and get to the fight. The second fight, I had a fucking amazing performance against him, but he just had a better performance. I didn't fight smart. I fought with my emotions. In the first fight, I fought smart, given that I was such an underdog. No one expected me to even be in there really to win or to do anything against him. Came out with a dominant performance, and it was one of those things. I think there was no expectations on me to have a good performance in that first fight, and I had a dominant performance, which made me feel a lot better. In my camp, knowing that shit, no one expects me to win. I was sick. Not only was I sick, I had a staph infection a couple weeks before that. Like, just a bunch of things leading up to it. I had a couple little nagging injuries. You know, my elbow, I had to get it drained because I had like fluid in it. I just had a bunch of things. And I trained a long time for that fight. I knew I was going to fight him. There was a lot of talk that I was going to fight him. I was coming off of a shoulder surgery. And I had shoulder surgery 5 months before that. So I was trying to get the range of motion. I knew I couldn't wrestle all that much in that fight because my shoulder, if he sprawled on me and I was, on the leg, he could have potentially tore my shoulder again. So I had a lot of things going on in my mind for that fight. And I was just thinking to myself, go out there, have fun. Whatever happens, happens. You'll get some big wins. You'll get back to him again. I know you will. And, I knew I could beat him. It just was a matter of me having a great fight. And in the first fight, it worked out for me. Second fight, not so much. Next one.
From ABJ, what's next for Zabit, considering that Max is currently at lightweight? Who would you like to see him face at this point in his career?
Pull up the weight class.
45, right?
Yeah, 145.
Right there.
That's not 45. That's 25.
Right here.
There you go, yeah. Jose Aldo just signed to fight Volkanovski.
Mm-hmm.
Zabit will not fight Frankie Edgar because they're from the same camp. He just beat Jeremy Stevens. I mean, the fact that I said this, I think I said this the other day on the show, yesterday when we filmed yesterday, was Moicano. Because they're very tall. Pull up Moicano. I think Moicano's 5'11" or 6 foot, and I think Moicano showed Jose Aldo too much respect. I think he learned his lesson from that fight. He's 5'11". And Zabit's 6'1". I think size-wise, it makes for a good fight. Both good on the feet. Both have good power. Moicano's wrestling is not as good as Zabit's, but Moicano is the same height and probably a little bit, I wouldn't say cleaner, crisper striker, but I think has a good chance of dealing with the reach and the range because of the size being so similar. 5'11" and 6'1", it doesn't say what their reach is on this, does it?
No.
Yeah. So 5'11" and 6 foot is 5'11" and 6'1". I bet the reach is pretty close to each other. Zabit with the long range was able to keep Jeremy Stevens away, making him, reach and lunge in for big punches. I think Moicano is going to be able to touch him, just like very much like the Jon Jones and Gustafsson fight. If you go back and watch that first fight, Gus was able to land shots that Jon Jones wasn't used to dealing with. Jon was able to always put his palm out and just like put his hand on your forehead like a big brother does to a little brother. And against Gus, he wasn't able to do that. And I think Moicano and Zabit makes for a great fight because of that situation and that scenario. Now, the only concern is that Zabit obviously being 17-1, and Moicano coming off of a loss to Jose Aldo, which there's no shame in that, obviously. I mean, Jose Aldo is a fucking walking legend, still doing his thing. But I think that Moicano in that fight showed him way too much respect, and he shouldn't have shown him the respect he did if he wanted to get that win. I don't know if it was just maybe, both being Brazilian, maybe just all the hype and just watching him probably growing up, watching him fight. I think that might have played a factor in it as well. But I think to me personally, that's the fight to make.
Justin Rogers. Love the show, guys. Please don't kick Sammy off the show. Thought John Fitch did a great job. Love it to see Ben Askren maybe do a guest host. That's not a question. But, always nice to get the good comments, and YouTube hates us so much.
Yeah, we never really get good comments on YouTube. YouTube people they're brutal, man. They're savages. Go ahead.
From Lee the Flea, what do you think about the whole Nick Diaz situation? I feel like he's going to want to come back eventually, but it'll be too late by then.
Nick Diaz?
Yep.
I think he's worth millions. I think he should fight again. The only problem is the UFC doesn't want to pay him big money. He only wants big money fights. He only wants to fight the best guys. I think what happened, though, was that somewhere along the line, Nick Diaz and the Anderson Silva fight kind of turned the UFC off to the Nick Diaz hype train. like the laying down in the cage, like not really trying to get after the fight. It became like turning his back. It became a really funky kind of fight, and that bothered, I think, the UFC. They're like, look, sure, everyone's talking about it still, but at the time it was more like this was a shit fight like to watch. And I think that turned them off a little bit to them, even though he's a draw. But who are you going to have him fight? You know, at 170, it's all wrestlers, and he'll have a hard time with all those guys. Pull up the 170.
It's right.
Right.
Wait.
Yeah, there it is, T-Wood. I would, like, if you want maybe Darren Till and him, maybe Masvidal and him, Leon Edwards and him. I think the fight with Stephen Thomson, it would end up being kind of a boring fight, only because Stephen would just outpoint him. I would love to see Nick Diaz fight again, but you need to find guys that he will engage with, and guys that he will. Masvidal would be perfect for him. Darren Till, perfect for him. Those are guys that will fight him. You know what I mean? Like, everyone else is gonna like try and take him down, wrestle him, hold him down, and physically, he's not physically strong. You know, like Nate Diaz, when I fought him, he wasn't physically strong at all. Like, he didn't feel strong at all. And I feel like wrestlers can just control him and dominate and control the position on the ground and take away his submissions. And it doesn't make for, you gotta do the matchups right. That's the one thing. That's the one thing that Strikeforce did, and Scott Coker did really well with him. He fought Scott Smith. He fought Scott Smith. He fought Paul Daly. He fought guys that made sense for him to fight, that would bring the best out in him. And the UFC doesn't really do that, you know. And I don't know, man. I really would like to see, I'd love to see him and Masvidal fight, or him and Darren Till fight. That would be a fucking amazing fight. Those two guys, I think, would stand in front of him and trade and throw down. You know, I think if you start getting beyond that, I don't think he'll want to. I don't think he'll want to fight those guys that are ranked less than that, because it doesn't. He's one of those guys, I think, it still feels like, oh, they don't do anything for me. They don't do anything for my career. You're gonna basically, if you do win, I've just catapulted your career to the next level. Darren Till, if he beats Darren Till or if he beats Masvidal, that puts him right into that title contention. I think if he fights the winner of Masvidal and Darren Till, it makes sense, because that puts him right in the title contention of like, hey, you get this win, you fight the winner of this, you get this win, maybe we'll have you fight Usman, or maybe we'll have you fight, you know, one of those guys. That makes sense. But he's been so far out of the game for so long. I mean, I don't even know if we're going to see the same Nick Diaz that we saw when he left, you know? Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see him fight. I want to see him fight. Next.
Clayton Funky, can you get BJ on in studio or phone?
Yeah, you know, he's supposed to be coming into San Jose here shortly, so we've been talking back and forth. But BJ is Hawaiian, and, you know, they're kind of on their own schedule. They're on Hawaiian time. We talk about it all the time. Like, hey, if you're on island time, that means no one knows what the fuck you're doing. So, but we have been talking and texting back and forth. So there is a good chance that he may come on. So if we can get him into town. So from what I understand, that he should be coming into town hopefully here shortly. That's the plan.
Gideon Doyle asks, how can an MMA fighter without a wrestling background make up for what deficit, even if he has good BJJ?
You got to spend a ton of time in the wrestling room, like, you know, still do your shadow boxing and work on your stand up and your jiu-jitsu, but you got to remember that you got to spend a ton of time in the wrestling room, man. Look at GSP was able to do it. GSP's one of the best wrestlers in the game right now, he just retired. But you know, he learned how to wrestle at a later age. He just spent a ton of time working on the techniques, drilling the techniques, getting good at what he was doing. Like, you don't need a ton of takedowns. You just need to know how to chain wrestle 2 or 3 of them together. So if you can get 3 takedowns that you do very well and learn how to chain them together, that's the next level of wrestling for MMA. Look, everyone in MMA right now can stop the first takedown. There's no doubt about it. But can they stop the second and the third? That's the story. Like, if you can't chain wrestle, you can't get takedowns in MMA anymore. You know, it's very rare. I mean, Khabib just has his power double, presses you to the fence, lifts you, takes you down. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule on all of them. But I think that the idea is that you need to get really good at 2 to 3 takedowns so you can chain wrestle them all together and keep people on their toes and on their heels for the takedown. That's the best advice I give you. Spend a lot of time in that wrestling room.
Abs the Great asks, after seeing Ben Askren's performance, how do you think he does against Khabib?
You know, it makes for an interesting fight. I think Askren's a tough fight for anyone, man. There's no doubt about that he's a tough fight for anyone. I mean, he's been a champion in every organization he's ever fought in. You know, and he's made it look easy. Sure, he took some big shots against Robbie Lawler. Dude, but he takes big shots. Those are the prices you pay to come in and get close enough for the takedown. That's the price you're going to pay every single time. Here's the other thing. Everybody knows what he's going to fucking do. It's not like he's going to stand all of a sudden he's a kickboxer. He's never going to do that. He's not going to do that. He's going to lock his 2 fingers around your fucking chicken legs and he's going to fucking take you down. That's what he's going to do. That's him, man. If he locks his 2 fingers, he's taking you down. That's the bottom line. And I think he showed Robbie Lawler, even though it was very controversial, but his grappling's pretty damn good, man. Like how often do you see a bulldog choke? And sure, it was something he slid into or slipped into, but it happens. You know, I mean, the same thing happened with Carlos Newton and Pat Miletich. I mean, it happens. It's a potential of being there. I mean, I've trained with some guys, and I was able to catch, a couple big guys with that bulldog choke. You just got to be in the right place at the right time. And obviously, everyone's seen the videos of him squeezing watermelons, you know, and breaking the watermelons, you know, with the squeeze. He's obviously physically strong, and everyone I've talked to said, and I've trained with him. I wrestled with him a little bit and grappled him a little bit, you know, back in the day. But he's physically strong. So that being said, he's got big hands, got good grips, and he's strong, man. He's tough. It's one of those positions, you know, you don't know how to get out of. And I think he did a great job of doing what he does best, and it worked for him. Next question.
Jim Walford, would you agree that Askren has the worst stand-up ever in UFC? That includes Ronda Rousey.
No, I mean, look, some of these guys have bad stand-up, dude. Some of them, like Damian Maia's stand-up is not that great. Ben Askren's stand-up is horrible. You know, John Fitch's stand-up, and he's my boy. It's not that great. You know, Jake Shields' stand-up is fucking horrible. But guess what? They're the master at their own craft. Like John Fitch is really good at getting the takedowns and grinding you out and keeping the pressure and being heavy on you. You know, his stand-up is not that great. Jake Shields, same thing. He's got a jab and that lead leg body kick. He does it all the time. But got to remember, he's got wins over guys like Dan Henderson. He's got big time wins, like Yushin Okami, guys like that. He's beaten. Like you got to go back and like watch his fights. Like he's beaten Damian Maia. Like it's just that thing. Like maybe they suck and lack in one area, but guess what? They're really fucking good in other areas, you know. And when you understand that, they don't need to have great. They don't need to have great stand-up. And Ben Askren is walking, living proof that you don't need great stand-up to be a fucking spectacular fighter. You just have to be really good at what you do. Randy Couture's stand-up was garbage. But it was enough to get in and close the distance, press you to the fence, get the takedowns, grind you out, do the work. I mean, he beat legend after legend after legend that fucking guy beat. You know, and he was always a smaller heavyweight champion, light heavyweight champion. Like, he was fucking phenomenal. His stand-up was never great, but he was really damn good at what he did. So if you go back and you look at the guys in history at what they did, like Matt Hughes, his stand-up wasn't good either. But what is he, 8-time or 9-time world, I think 9-time world champion. Defended his title, 9 times or whatever. Like, come on, man. Not all the best guys in the world or not all the guys that are in the Hall of Fame had good stand-up. They just were really good at what they did. And it kind of goes back to that whole Bruce Lee saying, like, he fears the guy that practices one move 1,000 times more than the guy that practices 1,000 moves one time. And that's that whole mentality. These guys were really good at what they did, and they practiced their moves over and over and over and over. Same stuff. And to go back to that question about the guy asking me about wrestling, is get really good at 2 or 3 takedowns and learn how to chain them together, and that will make you a good. That will help your your chances of being a good wrestler and getting guys to the ground when you're in a fight. Next question.
Oral asks, do you think Marty from Nebraska would beat T Wood again in a potential rematch?
Yeah, I think so. I never think that guys, when they lose by being dominated like that, should ever take an automatic rematch. But I think the UFC is going to offer it to him, and I think T Wood's going to take it, and I think he's going to lose again. And I don't know. I don't know if he was just flat that night or if Usman just was able to get into his head or whatever it was. I definitely think it'll be a closer fight, but I still think that Usman's going to be able to outwork him and out-hustle him because, like I said on the last show and in the show before they even fought, the guys that beat Tyron Woodley are the guys that put the pace on him, get in front of him, never let him set, kind of dictate the pace of the fight. You got to be cautious, though, because he's got the big power and the big speed right off the bat. You got to be wary of him in the first, 2 minutes of every round. But he tends to slow down towards the end of every round. And when he does, you can go ahead and push that pace on him and just not really break him, but get him to shut down. You can get him to not fight the way he would normally fight if he was the one dictating the pace. And Usman did that. Nate Marquardt did it to him. Some other guys have been able to do things like that to him. And I think that's the style that definitely can beat him. So I don't think he beats Usman the second time around. And I want to say, like, in rematches, I want to say the stats like 80% chance that the guy who won the first one's going to win the second one. Something like that. Next one.
From Danny NoRW, what is your honest thought on Johnny Walker?
I think he's talented. I think he's good. He's huge for the weight. 6'6" is no joke. Very fast and explosive. He's got to be careful with his after-fight celebrations because, bro, your career can get ended with something stupid like that. It doesn't make any sense. I talked about this yesterday with all the guys that are doing backflips off the fence or running and jumping off the fence, whatever it is. I don't think it's wise, man. I don't think it's wise at all. Those are the things, doing even backflips in the cage. Like GSP used to do that, and I was like, oh, man, if you come up short and break your toe, dude, like, or dislocate, you're out for 6 to 8 weeks of not training. You're ruining your rhythm of, you came out of the fight healthy. Like, you're ruining that flow of being healthy. Like, when you have one injury, that adds up. You have one injury, compensate a little bit when you're training, and then it ends up adding to another injury. And then you have another injury, and then that one doesn't hurt as much, but then it ends up going to another injury. They just start adding up. And once you start it's a snowball effect, and there's no reason for that. So, we just got to be careful, man. I think he needs to learn how to do post-fight interviews a little bit better, and I think he needs to be a little bit smarter with his celebrations afterwards as well. But fuck, man, the kid's, from what I've seen so far, he's pretty damn good. I'm excited to see him fight again here soon.
Tyson Hill asks, advice for young fighters.
When you think you're in good enough shape, you're not. Do more cardio. When you guys have to choose between sparring and hitting mitts or doing sprints at the track or doing your long distance run, do the long distance run and do the sprints at the track, because all that other stuff is a lot easier to learn or a lot easier to focus on. Like, if you notice when you're not in shape and you hit mitts, like your coach, like, okay, like 2-3-2. Double jab right hand, left hook, right hand. Like, in your mind, when you're not tired, you don't process what he says fast enough, and your reaction is delayed. Or you're asking him, what'd you say? Because you're stalling because you're tired. When you're in phenomenal shape, do you guys ever have any problems when he's holding mitts for you? Nope. Your reaction, you guys are on sync. You've had a whole camp to work together. It's because because you're in shape. Your mind is processing everything that he is saying to you as fast as it can, because you're in shape. When you're not in shape, or when you could be in better shape, you start you start questioning what your trainer's saying. You start looking to him for advice. Those are all things that that if you get in better shape, it makes your camp a lot better, and you learn a lot better throughout your camp. You should always go into your camp. I always did like 2 to 3 weeks of me getting my body in shape, and then I went into a full 6 to 8 week camp after that. So I actually was doing like a 9 to 10 week long camp, but the first 2 to 3 weeks was just me getting my body back in shape, dialing it in, taking it easy, not doing anything that would really get me hurt. and doing tons of cardio, sometimes 2 a days, making sure I was in phenomenal shape. One early in the morning, like a fasted cardio to get my weight down, making me feel lighter and faster. And then one maybe later in the evening that was like a shorter but more sprint duration. Like the one in the morning was long distance, like 3 to 4 miles of a slow, easy pace, maybe like a 6.5 minute mile or 7 minute mile, something like that for 3 to 4 miles. And then I would go home, eat, shower, sleep. Go train with the fighters from noon to 2, come back home, eat, shower, sleep, then go hit mitts. And then I would do like my long distance or my short duration of sprints or whatever at the track or stairs or hill sprints or whatever it was, but a short duration of sprints, 20 to 25 minutes of sprinting, hill sprints or track sprints or whatever, or liners or whatever it was in the evening. That's kind of what I would do. When you think you're in shape, you think you're in good enough shape, as a up-and-coming fighter or someone who's relatively new, you're not in good enough shape. You never train as hard as you do in the gym as you will. You'll never train as hard in the gym as you will fight in the cage. That just doesn't happen. There's nothing you can do. Your training partners, you'll rest, they'll rest, whatever it is. You'll never get in good enough shape to fight at a fast enough pace until you learn how to slow your breathing down, control your pace, and actually physically get in phenomenal shape during a camp. Your training partners will never push you as hard as the fighter will inside the cage. Next.
Rhythm and Range asks, will anyone else ever finish Nate Diaz by strikes? I think not. You don't get enough credit for that. That motherfucker is almost impossible to stop.
Yeah, it depends. I think he's gonna have to fight more. We just won't see. I don't think we're gonna see him fight. And the more time he takes off, the more likelihood of it happening again. Definitely. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I hope no one does, only because I'd like to be the only one that did it. But that being said, the more time he takes off, the chances of it happening again are higher.
From Stefan Kovacevic. Hopefully that was right.
You murdered that. Go ahead.
What do you think about the Vitaly Minakov fight robbery? And do you think Darko Stosic will reach title contention?
So I don't think the Minakov was a robbery. I don't think it was a robbery. I think it was a good fight. I think both of them left it up to the judges, but it was a close fight. That's what happens when you leave it up to the judges. Minakov, I think what cost him the fight was he looked physically exhausted after the second round, and then when the fight ended, he just looked like he was done. Like done. The fight was done, but he was done. And it makes a difference, I think, in the refs and the judges' eyes. Now, Big John McCarthy tried to tell me, oh no, the cards are already turned in. John, he looked tired in the fight. He looked tired in the third round. And if you don't think that skews the judges or the crowd or however it is, that skews them. And I like Big John. Big John and I, we never agree on anything, but we've learned to really get along with each other since we work so closely with each other. And, but in this case, I feel like, sure, maybe the scorecards are in, fine, they're getting turned in right away, whatever it is you want to say. But throughout that third round and even into the second round, I think it makes a difference. It makes a difference on how these judges scored the fights because he looked exhausted. And I'll give you another example of a fight that happened in history. I thought Trevor Prangley beat Jeremy Horn when they fought. The thing was, Trevor looked so fucking tired. That fight, he was sick. He was on antibiotics. He just looked exhausted. He couldn't keep his hands up. He was so tired. The judges just gave it to him. The judges gave it to Jeremy Horn because Jeremy Horn at the time was a bigger name. That was one. Two, he looked, and there was moments, I think, where he stepped back in the fight and put his hands on his knees. That automatically judges are like, all right, dude, you're exhausted. You're tired. You're not winning this fight. Like, it just looks bad. And so then when that happened, I think that was the fight that if you guys want something to relate it to, now sure, Minakov didn't look that bad, but in that fight though, he wasn't doing anything that really would warrant him winning the fight either. It was a close fight, man. It was close. You leave it up to them, up to the judges. I thought Czech should have done a lot more because The leg kicks were landing. They were having a good effect. All he had to do was do it a little bit more, and I think he would have had a way more dominant performance and would have won by a lot bigger margin. But he just didn't pull the trigger. His leg kicks didn't start coming on until the third round. Or I was like, what are you doing? You should have done this in the first 2 rounds. Your leg kicks are nasty. I mean, but he had some big shots. The thing is, the third round was a very lackluster round in general. But Czech won the round. And so, I mean, it came down to it being a split decision. But, Minikov, I think he looked so tired that it ended up playing a factor in the judge's eyes. All right, next question.
Josh, as a member of AKA, who is the best fighter of AKA from Corey Welch?
Barring injuries, best fighter is Cain Velasquez. The best guy to come through that door has been Cain Velasquez. Now, it's a close second though. I would say is Khabib and DC are like right up in there. Those guys. And then I would probably say John Fitch is maybe fourth. Somewhere in there, I would say John Fitch. And then the rest of us kind of like follow down below that. But I would say Cain first. He's just been plagued with injuries his whole career. It's very unfortunate and not just little injuries like, oh, he broke his hand, okay, it's fixed, okay, ready to fight again, or oh, he broke his foot or whatever it is, or whatever. It hasn't been that easy for him. It's been, back problems and sciatica problems and neck issues and broken hand and broken foot and torn ACLs. I mean, he's had some fucking things that have just had him out forever, man. And so I would say he would be number one. Khabib and DC are basically like neck and neck tied, but I would probably give a little bit of the edge to DC because he's a 2-division champion. But then I put him tied neck and neck only because Khabib's also undefeated, 27-0. He's only lost 1 round in his whole UFC career. I mean, that's fucking pretty damn special. And you could arguably say that he just took that round off, and that was in his last fight. Then I would say maybe John Fitch, because John Fitch came up in that era of the welterweights that were just fucking. I felt like that group of welterweights that he had fought were just fucking. They were good, man. They were killers and they were good, and and he had some good dominant performances against a lot of guys, and he ended up getting to that title shot. And I mean, he came up short against GSP, but I mean, he fought a tough fight. But it is what it is, man. It's the fight game. This is what happens. So, but I would say him, and then I would say probably like it goes to like me and Koscheck and Swick, and we kind of fall, down below that. But I think the relatively unknown is guys like Islam Makhachev. He's somebody that definitely is one of the, definitely has the potential to be one of the greats to ever come out of AK, for sure. Yeah, but those are the guys that I keep there kind of on that Mount Rushmore of AKA. Anyways, next.
So this is from Gareth Sharples. Why Robbie's other hand that was continuously gripping Askren's ankle got overlooked?
Well, if you go back and watch the video, and someone actually pointed out, he gave Herb Dean a thumbs up.
No, the other hand that was gripping his ankle.
No, I know, but I'm just simply saying, like, you really don't need any more proof than the thumbs up. He picks his hand up and he drops it, and Robbie gives him a thumbs up. His hand doesn't really ever hit the ground. Watch, he picks it up, he lets it go. And when he lets it go, he gives him the thumbs up. Right there. See? Like, I'm good. And then he puts his hand on the ground like, I'm good, I'm comfortable, and that's the game. What I love, though, is that Robbie gets up, yells at him real quick, like, what the fuck are you doing? And then he takes a deep breath, and he's like, it's too late now. Gives her, a quick high five. Obviously, Dana's already said that they're going to run it back. He said it immediately after the fight. That to me means automatically the fight's being done. There's no other fight they're going to make. They're going to make Robbie and they're going to make Ben Askren again.
Last question is Josh Vance. Ben Askren again. He asks, is it just me or does Ben Askren look and sound a little downsy? laugh out loud. I thought he looked uncoordinated and super slow. Definitely loved the first few seconds. I don't even hate Askren. It's just that when someone talks so much shit, it's always nice to see them get slammed on their head.
I think the thing with Ben, though, is that Ben's always been Ben. This is Ben. This is how he was in Bellator. This is how he was in ONE FC. This is how he is now in the UFC. The issue is every organization he's went to, his style is not marketable. His personality is, but his look isn't. That's the hardest part you're gonna have. Like the thing with Conor McGregor, he talks well, he's good looking, he's marketable, he's pretty much a man of his whole country. It makes it easy. The same thing also with GSP. Didn't speak English very well, but he tried. And when he did do it, it was funny. You know, the whole getting on his knees, begging for a title shot, like that, like set precedent. Like no one had ever done that before, and he did it with like, you know, the Kermit the Frog voice, and everyone loved it and ate it up, and he became a fan favorite ever since that moment. I mean, he was just one of those guys. Ben doesn't have that. Ben needs to do it other ways, and so he's been champion everywhere he's been. There's a good chance he's gonna be champion here, and it's very interesting. To be honest, it's very, very interesting. You know, ONE FC just like, look, we just can't do anything with you, man. You're smashing all these guys. We can't get top guys to fight you because they know they're going to lose to you. And that's it. That's the bottom line. And then Bellator had nothing else because they just couldn't market him because his style is not entertaining, you know. But he wins fights, man. And I think the fact that he is now more vocal on Twitter and all these things, and it's given him a platform to kind of market himself, I think it's going to make for a lot more entertainment value. It's going to bring a lot more value to him for him to market his career. And now that he's fighting in the UFC, he has a great chance to, as long as he keeps winning, he has a great chance of becoming marketable as long as he keeps winning. Once he loses one, they're going to give him a little bit of a pass once he loses one. But if he loses two, they're going to be like, all right, the hype's over, time to move on. That's what they're going to do to him. And that's what happens. They did it with Jake Shields. They did it with John Fitch. They did it with other guys that are not very entertaining. I could see them potentially doing it with Stephen Thomson. The only reason why I say they maybe won't do it with Stephen Thomson is that he speaks well, he's good looking, and he carries himself like a professional, as well as that his style brings a different style into that weight class in the whole organization to let everyone know that karate or taekwondo or whatever it is, you know, that he does is still able to be used successfully in the biggest sport or the best sport in the world, in the best combative sport in the world. And so I think that he still brings that dynamic of, you know, Lyoto Machida and that karate, and Stephen Thomson and that karate, and that style of stand-up still exists and it's still effective if used properly and used at the highest level. So, yeah. That's what I think.
Okay, now it's my question.
Oh, shit.
Do you have an update on Cain? Is he getting surgery? Is he going to be out for a long time?
Do I have an update on Cain? I just had dinner with Cain on Saturday night. He has some more stuff going on that he needs to look into to see if maybe they can avoid surgery. But there is a chance that he may get it. But I do believe that with all the stuff that's going on with stem cells and things like that, he may be able to have it all fixed without surgery and straight to the stem cells. He's able to walk around. He's able to do things. He just said there's moments where if he tries to do lateral movements or if he gets out and he twists a little bit, if he's getting out of the car, there's a little bit of pain, a little bit of this. I mean, but that's common though. Anytime you kind of hurt your knee a little bit, there's still, I think, a little bit of swelling. So that's probably making it's causing a little bit more pain and putting pressure in areas on his knee that wouldn't be there if the swelling wasn't there. But look, he may not need surgery. I can't give you a direct answer if he may or if he will need surgery. They're still going to do some more tests, and I think they're also going to potentially try maybe stem cells first. If it's not a guarantee for surgery, they're going to try the stem cells first. So.
And then my other question is,
you're what?
What
do you want?
So, listening to Joe Rogan on his podcast yesterday.
He doesn't like me for some reason. I don't know. I people have hit him up, and people are like tagging me on stuff saying like, "Hey Joe, when you have Josh on?" And I don't know. I thought Joe and I were always cool, and But I think it's so funny. I even reached out to him probably like a year ago saying like, hey man, like I've been on Brendan's show and Brendan told me to hit you up and when try to get on and he's like, oh yeah, I'm booked like months out. I'm like, well, I'll be in town, around this time. No response, never heard back. So I mean, it is what it is. I've tried.
He's a busy guy.
But go ahead.
So you mentioning that, why are you making that face at me?
No, I'm waiting for you to get this comment, the question out.
So one thing is he did actually say to Brendan yesterday on the podcast that they do need some new people for Fight Companion. So maybe you can.
I would love to do something for Fight Companion. I would love to.
And then the other question is, he said that people that are saying Anthony Smith was stupid for not taking a DQ win are stupid themselves. Do you still stand by that?
No, I said two things. I said, as a man, he did the right thing. As a business decision, he did the wrong thing. He should have taken it, could have ran it back, would have got paid double because he would have been the champion. I'm not saying that he should have done it. I'm simply saying that, look, here's the thing.
You and Chael are on the same page, by the way.
Yeah, here's the thing. Somebody said to me, someone in the fucking comments said something about like, yeah, but fans wouldn't have never looked at him as being the champion or wouldn't have never like respected him. I said, do you think in 20 years after he made $500,000, he's going to give a fuck about the fucking fans that don't even fucking know his name anymore? You guys need to remember all of this. If you're a fighter and look, I'm cool either way. I'm cool if he decided to do what he did. I think it's fun. And I would probably say 100%. I would have probably done the same exact thing that he did. But in my mind, when this was going on, during watching the fight, he was losing the fight. There was no chance of him really winning that fight. If he takes the DQ, becomes champion, no one needs to respect him. I don't think he even needs to give a shit. He's going to make $500,000 on the next fight. In 10 years, or when he's done fighting and his kids are in private school and his kids are getting a good education and he's got a roof over his head, you think he's going to give a fuck about the fans at home that, don't respect him anymore? No. Some of you guys probably won't even remember his name in 4 or 5 years. So when you guys making that argument, you're fucking ridiculous. Like, you guys sound stupid and ignorant when you guys say that. I'm saying as a business decision, he didn't make the right call. But as a man and somebody with morals and somebody with integrity, he did the right thing. Okay? I'm just simply saying there was no way he was going to win that fight. Even Dana came out and said, look, he's a gamer. There was never a thought in my mind that he would just take the DQ. But here's the other thing. Would any of us have said that we blamed him? He took a fucking flush knee to the side of the head against the cage. No give. So had he not been able to continue, and it was behind the ear, had he not been able to continue, like, why are we saying that he's a pussy if he doesn't, or he's a fucking, or he's a scumbag for taking the DQ? What if he really couldn't continue? People would still have given him flack. But instead, he's putting his life on the line and going on in that next round or whatever that round was to fucking continue the fight because he's got integrity. I'm simply saying, though, who the fuck are we to judge whether he could have continued to fight or not? We put so much pressure on the guy who got the foul committed on him. Why aren't we putting the pressure on the person who committed the fucking foul? You guys, I don't get this. I don't get that part of it all. Like, he's tough, or he needs to show that he was tough, or he needs to show integrity. No, he doesn't. He's obviously got some integrity. But I'm simply saying, like, he could have collected his paycheck and then turned around and fought him again and made double the money or maybe even more for being the champ, even though, sure, the fans didn't look at him as ever being the champ. Who gives a fuck? He's the champ. He now has that belt in his trophy case at home for his kids to grow up and see, and people and family and friends to see. And in 15 years, 5 years, I think, even less, 5 or maybe around that time, half of you guys won't even remember who the fuck he is. Okay? And that's the thing. Like, in 5 to 7 years, he's that amount of money he would have made would have sent his kids to probably good schools, would have bought his kids or put a roof over their head, maybe bought them motorcycles or bikes or put them in private school, like put them in swim lessons or whatever the fuck he wants to do. That's more important in life, you guys. Those are the things that are more important in life than, making sure that the fans care if I have integrity or not. You guys are way overestimating your guys' value as fans to a fighter who needs to take care of his family and support his family. You guys also shouldn't be criticizing the fighter who got illegally kneed in the back of the head or on the side of the head or behind the ear. You guys should be criticizing the guy who did the illegal kneeing and not criticizing the guy who, if he doesn't continue fighting, he's a pussy and a piece of shit and a scumbag. That's bullshit. Like, the fact that he did continue to fight, I tip my hat to him. I'm simply saying, as a business decision, though, who the fuck are we to judge whether he shouldn't continue fighting or not? Like, because of his integrity and he's going to lose fans because of it. No one gives a shit. You guys are way overestimating your guys' value as fans. Just the bottom line. And in that take, you don't know what he's going through. Maybe he's seeing double. Maybe his equilibrium is off. Maybe when he stood up, he was having, things just weren't functioning properly. It happens, and we are not, myself included, are not here to judge him for whatever he decided to do. We don't have that right. We're not the ones that got kneed on the side of the head. All you fucking couch warriors sitting at home saying his integrity would have never been considered the champion. No one gives a shit. And I think had he taken the DQ, I wouldn't have even second guessed it. Dude, you got kneed by Jon Jones in the side of the head behind the ear. We are not you should not be someone to judge. Okay? Stay on your couch. Be a fan of the sport. Do not criticize the guys that are actually doing their thing. That's the one thing. That's my take on that whole scenario. Like I said, in one take, I commend him for showing his integrity. But on the other hand, as a business decision, it would have been better for him to take the DQ, become champion, get the automatic rematch, and make triple the money. That's my take on it. But he did the right thing. He did what if he was able to fight, he did the right thing. But if he wasn't able to fight, who the hell are we to judge? That's the bottom line. What else? You got something? I know I just went off. I was nice all day.
That was a good argument.
I was nice all day until that tangent. Gosh, man.
Was it a good argument?
I was trying to be positive. The whole day. There's no Sammy here, so it's very rare that I can be positive when Sammy's around because, Sammy makes me not be positive.
But I think you had to clear the air there because you were taking a lot of shit, and I think that argument's good.
Yeah, and my argument is that,
I even agreed with Joe Rogan until you just gave that argument right now.
All right. Well, hey, who knows? Maybe that little argument will get us on the Fight Companion. Like I said, I don't know. I went down and I've flown down a couple times and been on Brennan's show. And I mean, every time I've talked to Brady, he's like, hey, how come you haven't been on Joe's show? And I'm like, I don't know. Fucking ask Joe. Joe doesn't really, I've hit him up twice. I even asked Brennan, I was like, hey, does he handle his own, his own media stuff? Because I've hit him up on Twitter, as far as through his DM. And then I've also hit him up and text him and no response. So I'm assuming that, that there's no interest. And I don't know. It is what it is. I almost feel a little offended because he's had other guys on there that I don't know. So, but hey, it is what it is. Look, I listen to his show all the fucking time. Big fan. I love his show. I love all the stuff like Ben Greenfield he just had on recently. Love listening to that one. And then I had a hard time listening to this last one with Brennan Schaub because Brennan's voice was gone. Yeah. So I was like, but who am I to complain about that? I'm the one with the cough all the time. Yep. So
Josh the Cough Thompson.
Yeah, Josh the Cough Thompson. It's so funny. Someone posted that. They posted that a couple times. I think weekly one person posts it.
That's so funny. Cool. Well, I think
we covered it, huh?
Yeah. There's not a whole lot really that's come out.
Oh, there was one thing that I saw. Somebody said, they had posted a thing about the Nevada State Athletic Commission saying, because we're talking about Anthony Smith right now, about how that they were fine with the ruling of this, not Anthony Smith, but the Ben Askren ruling and the Robbie Lawler, it being stopped. I'm going to go on another little bit of a rant. Of course they are. They're not going to say after the fact that it shouldn't have been stopped. They don't want guys that have been stopped too early to come to them and be like, hey, you ruled against that, or you said that that was an early stoppage. Well, my fight got stopped early too. What the hell do you think they're going to say? Of course they're going to say, no, like, yes, we were fine with the stoppage. It was a good stoppage. They don't want guys to come out of the woodwork saying, hey, you remember this time when I got sat to my butt and the ref jumped in, it shouldn't have been stopped? Or, hey, my arm was straight, but I didn't tap and the ref stopped it. They're not going to change those. They're not going to change those decisions. Nothing that you say, Robbie Lawler, to go to them. If Robbie's going to go to them, they're never going to change it. Never. I went through this with the Patricio Pitbull thing when I got headbutted and got dropped. Big John wasn't in the right position. I'm picking on Big John again, but I always pick on Big John, and Big John knows this, is Big John wasn't in the right position. And the worst part was the judges, this is why they need to have monitors instead of just watching the fight. They don't have monitors. They didn't see the way the judges were seated in that cage or around that cage. They didn't see me get headbutted. They thought it was a punch. They even told Big John it was from a punch from me getting dropped the first time. And that was not true. So that being said, when you go back and you watch that fight, I got dropped by a headbutt. We both clawed heads. It was very accidental. But I'm simply saying that when I went to the commission, they are not going to change. They are not going to change their decision for anything. It's not going to happen. They don't want somebody from 2 years ago coming over or last year or 6 months or just recently saying they want to change their decision because the same thing happened to them. They're not going to deal with that. So when the commission came out and they said, oh, they were okay with this, no shit. They're going to do whatever they can to protect their ass and defend the decision the ref made in there so they don't have to go back and make changes to whatever happened in the fight. That's my 2 cents on that. All right? That's me weighing in, right, Dave?
Yep. Yep, weighing in.
I think that's it, man. I think we wrapped it up. This was a long one, right? Fuck, this was long. What, like 2 hours?
No, we're about an hour and a half.
Oh, hour and a half. Damn, that's too much time with you. Period.
How do you think I feel?
And all right, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in for Punk's Opinion. I truly appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notifications bell. Get notifications on when we drop new ones. We're going to try and drop every one this week. Tomorrow probably one again. We're trying to do something. Hopefully some news drops today, or we'll go back over. We may even try and break down some fights. Who knows? We may even try and break down maybe my fight with Pitbull since we just talked about it. God, brutal, nasty, horrible. Anyways, we can also go back and maybe take a look at like the Yves Edwards fights. I'm cool with talking about my losses. Doesn't bother me at all. It still kind of stings a little bit, but hey, just hit the notification buttons, get notifications, and the notification bell to get notified when we have new stuff that drops. YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify. Hit all those subscribe buttons if you guys can. Please do me a favor, share whatever you guys like, bits and pieces of it. Hit up on our YouTube channel. You can share the videos, and I give breakdowns on certain stuff. And go ahead and share those all around. Tell people to share it. I do truly appreciate it. I need your guys' support. Try and get this thing out there. And if you guys can, hit up Joe Rogan. Be like, yo, bro, you're looking for more people on Fight Japan. Hit up Josh Thomson. What about that guy? Just an idea. I won't be mad at you guys if you guys do that. Otherwise, hey, thanks for tuning in. Another edition of Punk's Opinion. Have a good day.